Sure. I'm Kristin Brenner. I am a parenting coach. I teach mindfulness, self-compassion, and yoga. And I have my master's in social work and have worked with children and families. Why don't I spend just a few minutes talking about what drew me to homeschooling way back when. And actually, Laura, you were part of that. You probably don't realize that. But when my kids were little, the library was and still is one of my favorite places in the world to be, especially with my kids. And I was in there one afternoon and Laura said, "You homeschool, right?" And I had kind of been on the fence that year about homeschooling, and I really had wanted to, but I felt like because I was pregnant at the time, the right thing to do was to send my kids to school. I didn't feel like I could give them my full attention. I was due in November. And so, as soon as Laura said that, I was like, I know that I should be homeschooling right now. Why am I not doing this? And it was like kind of a light bulb moment that I've never talked to Laura about. So, she doesn't even know that happened. And so it was the following year. My kids finished out that school year. My baby was then just about to turn a year old. And that's when we began homeschooling. So, and the reason I did it, I always like to really let people know, there's a million reasons why people homeschool, and I had my own million reasons. But the reason for me never was that there was something wrong with the school. And I really love and support teachers and feel like they're such a tremendous resource, and gosh, where would we be without teachers in this world, right? So I loved our teachers. We did not have a bad experience. But what I knew for myself was that I wanted to create this really kind of loving, caring bubble for myself and my family, and that was just a value that I had that was just kind of an unchangeable part of myself. And so and then there were a few other little things. My daughter, who has always been a super sweet kid, really struggled with how long the school day was, even as she got into first grade. And so she would get home from school and be exhausted and couldn't kind of make it through the evening without these huge meltdowns. And it turns out she had some health issues that over the years we figured out, but it took a really long time for us to figure that out. But I knew that a quieter, less stressful day was going to be better for her. And that was a good intuition on my part, because it was a huge benefit to her that she could sleep when she needed to, and all those meltdowns kind of stopped when we started homeschooling, for her anyways. And so those are the two main reasons. And the last reason is that really is also part of my value system, that we spend a lot of time outside. And so we spent in the first many years of homeschooling, we spent tons of time outside. And so you'll hear me talk a lot about outdoor resources in our community that you can access today. But I just, when we first went into the kind of shutdown with the pandemic, I was teaching yoga still on Zoom. And so I told my kids I'm going into, and they're old, they're all 14, 16, 18, and almost 20. So old enough to know, right? So I said, I'm going to teach, don't interrupt me. Came in to teach, and my 18-year-old daughter opened the door. "Are you busy?" So I get the toddler screaming lunch scene completely. So Sam, if you have any questions as we're going through this, or anyone else does, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask them, or just type them into the chat box and I'll answer them for you. So I just want to, because my background is in mindfulness and self-compassion, I always come from a point of finding my own grounding first, as a parent, as a practitioner, as a yoga teacher, whatever it is that I'm working in. And as I have watched parents over the last however many months this is, I see that stress and anxiety level just like ratcheting up and ratcheting up for people. And, you know, I really understand that. This is an incredibly stressful time. And we don't have a lot of answers of, you know, what this is going to end up being. And so we're just all of us going day by day, trying to provide the best that we can for our kids, and you know, hoping that the decisions we make are the right decisions. And the truth is, that's really always how it is. We never know what's around the corner. We think we do, and we make our plans, but we never know what's coming. And so we're just seeing that and feeling that much more right now. So I just like to talk about, the very first thing that I like to talk about is managing kind of your nervous system. So we have these two nervous systems, the sympathetic part of this massive nervous system. There are these two parts, the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system puts us into fight, flight, or freeze. That's when we get activated and we, you know, either feel like we have to do something or we don't know what to do. And the parasympathetic nervous system is our rest and digest nervous system. And I bring this up because how we're managing our nervous system has an impact on our kids. It has an impact on how they're managing their nervous system. So if we're feeling ramped up all the time and we're coming from that place, they're going to feel that. And we have the capacity to manage our own nervous system, and then also teach our kids how to manage that. So whether you're homeschooling or doing virtual learning, you can provide kind of support for your kids in relation to managing their level of activation, stress, anxiety, whatever it might be. So one way to do that is just with a few simple deep breaths. And so I just want to try that today to help us ground into the moment, so that as we go through this, we can just remember that we have the capacity to do this. So just 3 deep breaths. And I'll ask you to exhale for twice as long as you inhale. And there's a reason I'll talk about that when we're done. So just notice your seat. Maybe notice your feet on the floor if you're sitting in a chair. Maybe notice the sitting bones underneath you, and just take a deep breath in. And then see if you can let the breath release from the body for twice as long as you inhale for. And you don't even have to count, just find that awareness. And then breath coming back into the body, filling the lungs, and then release. Nice long exhale. And then one more time, inhale deeply. And exhale. And release and letting go. So this is called an elongated exhale breath, or a 2-to-1 breath. And it specifically addresses the vagus nerve, which is responsible for that parasympathetic nervous system, for rest and digest. When our parasympathetic nervous system is active, when we're in a restful state, we can't be stressed at the same time. So it's one system or the other. So when we give ourselves even just 1 minute to take a few deep breaths, we calm ourselves down, we relate to our kids in a more positive way, and we teach them because they see it. And that's an easy breathing technique that you can do with your kids. It doesn't really take any training at all. We all know how to breathe, right? So, so I want to address, and please, if you have questions, just go ahead and let me know. But I wanted to address the idea that I hear from so many people about worrying about falling behind as you homeschool. And this is a worry that I had myself as a homeschool mom. And I'm finally kind of at peace with that. We're really kind of enculturated into this belief that we have to meet certain milestones at certain stages, or else something terrible is going to happen. And that's not really how the brain works. We actually know from research that we are lifelong learners. We have what's called neuroplasticity. Our brain continues to change and grow over the course of our lifetime. And if you've ever tried to teach yourself something, you might recognize that there's a piece of that learning that maybe you're more attracted to, and you learn that first, and then you go on to maybe what someone said you should learn in the beginning. And that's actually the way that we learn. We do what's kind of attractive to us and interesting to us, and what maybe seems easy. Some of us really like a challenge, some of us don't. We all have different learning styles. But this idea of falling behind is it can make us feel that activation that I just talked about. It can make us feel that stress. But in terms of homeschooling, it's not really, it doesn't really come out to bear. So if you find that you're going to send your kids back to school eventually, when this is all done, you might really worry about that. And what I'll say to you is, what I know about kids is that they are resilient, they're resourceful, and for the most part, most kids can find their way. And I don't know if you remember being younger and maybe a new kid came into your school and they were from a different school district or even a different state, and there were all these kind of whispers about this child is behind this. And so eventually, by the end of the year, maybe the next year, the kid was no longer behind. They were doing just fine. And so this is the reality of what our brains do. They can catch up, they can learn, they can figure out, they can grow, and they will do all that regardless of what we present to them, because that's the nature of the human brain. So I always just kind of try to remind people to try to stay out of that thinking. And I say that letting you know that I found myself awake at night, very worried that my kids were behind. Yes, go ahead.
Kristin, we see families here with kids that have very different age groups. So I'll see a family that's homeschooling with a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old, maybe a 15-year-old. And I never really understood how they made that work. If they're all doing it at once and you're one person and they're in different grades, how does that work?
Well, this goes actually to just what I was talking about. We all learn, one of the things that you learn in social work school is to begin where the client is, right? So it's the same thing with homeschooling. You begin where your student is, but your student, so if I present something about, say, I don't know, the life cycle of a cell, okay? The 4-year-old is going to get what they get out of that. The 8-year-old is they're each going to get a piece of that. It's not going to be the same thing. It's not going to be processed in the same way because their brains are different. And they'll each have different learning styles. They're learning in a completely different way. And so there are schools, across the country. There's one in Saratoga called SIS that do multi-age learning. And it's actually probably, I would say, a more beneficial way to learn, because first of all, the older kids can teach the younger, and what better way to learn than to teach? This is how I've learned nearly everything in my life. As soon as I get learning it, I'm like, I want to teach this, and then I teach it and I know even more. And the kids will each just kind of learn what they need to learn where their level is at in that moment, and they'll add on to it as they go. But, we did so many different, like I'm thinking about a field trip that we did. There's a group called the Floating Classroom in Lake George, and they do, it's literally a classroom on a boat. And then, so you go out on the boat, they teach you this, you take water samples, you look at them under the microscope, they talk about the health of the lake, they talk about runoff and the environment, and it's a wonderful program. And then you go out in the woods and you go through the creek that that runs into the lake, and you take the water samples there. And you know, you could have kids who were 6 or 7 years apart, and they're doing it together, and they're each learning exactly what they need to learn in that moment, exactly what they need to get out of it, and remembering it at different levels. You know, you know, how it's going to stick with them is going to be different for each child, depending on their areas of interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I think it's really important, rather than thinking about whether the kids are going to be behind, is to think about coming from a strengths perspective and a resiliency perspective. So the great thing about homeschooling, the really wonderful thing, is you get to focus on the strengths that your kids have, and really, you know, help them identify those strengths first of all. And this is exactly what any teacher in a classroom would do, right? They know this child learns great this way, so they're going to kind of do this type of activity to help that child learn. And this child learns the other way, so now we're going to do this other, you know, whether it's auditory, visual, you know, moving around more, whatever it might be. So, you know, you figure out your kids' strengths and you teach to them based on what's best for them. But I'll also say you teach based on what's best for you, because you're their parent, you're creating their home environment, and you have to feel good about what you're doing as well. And so, you know, it's always, my kids have heard me say a million times that it's always about finding balance. And sometimes their needs might be most important, and sometimes my needs might be most important. And we just kind of, you know, put that all together and see what we get. So, you know, I think it's important to bring your own value system in. Like, that is, you know, my whole homeschool experience was based on my own values as a parent and what was important for me that my kids learn. And so, you know, when I went to bed at the end of the day, I could feel good about what I was doing with them and how they were learning. And I think, you know, I was reading this article, this thing about Hugh Jackman, actually just yesterday, and he was talking about how he when he wakes up in the morning, he imagines himself at the end of the day and what he is saying he did that day. And so he'll actually write a list, and instead of the list being today I will, he writes today I did, and the things that he really wanted to accomplish. And I love that idea, because you're really setting out what do you want your day to look like. And I think that, you know, you can do that for yourself and for the kids in terms of, you know, is obviously I taught 2 of my kids to read. You know, reading was hugely important to me. So that was something that was going to be important every day. How much did we read? And that was like many times throughout the day. It was, you know, if stuff goes off the rails, my kids didn't know this, but it was always, oh, let's go grab a book and read. Because that's immediately you're regulating with your kids. You're getting them in your lap or next to you. You're breathing together. You're connected, and you're focusing on this amazing experience of connecting with a book, which, you know, is, I mean, I have stacks of books all over my house. It's a little crazy. So, you know, for me, that had to be a part of every day. Reading had to be a part of the day. And eating together had to be a part of the day. And getting outside had to be a part of the day. And eventually I came to realize if I hit those 3 things, we were doing okay. We probably had a really good day, regardless of what happened with school. Of course, my kids would tell you that I'm super strict. So I'm sounding like this, like la woo woo mom, and that's not really me. I am like, you're going to listen, and we're going to follow the rules, and you don't get to do this if you don't do that. And, you know, they know that there are rules, and they don't always follow them, but I don't give in on the consequences of those. So that means that they don't have TV that day, or they don't get to, you know, look at their iPad or whatever. And they only just got iPads recently, and they're all in their teens. So I guess my point is to say that if you're really struggling with something, if you're having a tough day, the best thing for you to do is just kind of pull back and be with your kids. Go in the woods, read a book, play Legos with them, whatever you do that feels good to you with your kids. So with all that said, I know I said that I would talk about some local resources, so I want to bring that up. And please, again, feel free to jump in with any questions. But of course, the library is one of my most favorite resources. And you can, if you're on Zoom here now, you know that you can reach them online and go to the library website, and you can reserve books that way, which is, and in fact, at a certain point, my kids were old enough to do that themselves. I would tell them, go find this book online, and they learned how to, they know how to get a book from the library now. So that's great. And then a great resource for New York State in terms of the library is the New York City Public Library. If you're a resident of New York State, you can get a library card with them, and you can use we use what are they called? eBooks, and we use a lot of audiobooks. And so if it's at Saratoga Public Library, I grab it from there, but sometimes they're not there, and I can go to the Public Library in New York on their website and take audiobooks out from them. We're not fans of ebooks here at this house, but I know lots of people are, and so that's available as well on both websites. So that's a great resource. Then locally, there's a couple groups on Facebook that I want to bring your attention to. One is Kathy Cicere's website, which is, her group, which is called DIY Homeschool with Kathy Cicere. And her last name is Ceceri, and she has all kinds of information about regulations and all kinds of ideas. She was actually a tremendous resource for me when I first started homeschooling. She had been homeschooling for a long time. We only recently met, but I used her blog posts frequently. And then she has a website, her name, kathycicere.com. Again, tons of resources there. There's a Capital District New York homeschooler group, Capital District Homeschooler. You can find a ton of them. I will say that it gets a little overwhelming. The amount of information that's out there can be overwhelming, and at some point you just have to turn it off and do whatever it is you're going to do, kind of find your way. We have used, we don't do a lot online. We're doing more and more online now, but as they're older. But I have always loved Khan Academy, especially if I needed to teach them something, particularly in math, and I needed to relearn it myself or learn it because I really did poorly in math. So you can get the lessons right on Khan, and they're pretty well explained. And there's tons of other stuff too. PBS, there's a website called ny.pbslearningmedia.org, and you can go there to, you can kind of set up a whole learning system for your kids there. Same with BBC. It's bbc.co.uk/bite-size. So those are the websites that I would use and that I have used. And then I did a lot of outdoor stuff and a lot of local field trips with my kids. And I don't know what that's going to look like this year for people. The outdoor stuff is mostly open. So I'll give you some of the local resources. The Spa State Park has a nature center now down by the creek, and Allie Schweizer is the park naturalist there, and she was a regular monthly teacher for my kids for years and years and years and years. And we just adored her. So we set up a group with her that just met once a month in the park. And then Moreau State Park also has a nature center and a park naturalist. Her name is Rebecca Mullins. She does an amazing job. And she was doing, in the spring, she was doing videos online. She would kind of bring in one of the animals that they have in the nature center, and she would do the video and talk about that animal and what it needs, what its natural habitat would be, how she ended up having the animal there. And so that I told you I'm a nature person, so I watched those even though my kids weren't watching them. I was like, look, Rebecca's doing a nature thing. Saratoga Battlefield is a great resource. There's so much space there and so much to do and learn. Obviously, Congress Park in Saratoga, there's the Saratoga History Museum is right there in the park, which is amazing. And just walking through the park is a great experience. There's a place in Bolton Landing called Up Yonder Farm. We did many years of monthly programs up there. We called them, and they developed a monthly program for a small group of homeschoolers that we had, and that was amazing. We did a Star Lab program with them, and all kinds of hikes, and we did a pond study every year and built birdhouses. And then there's also the Wild Center, which is north. I can't remember exactly where that is. And it's now called the Adirondack Experience. It used to be the Adirondack Museum at Blue Mountain Lake.
Oh.
That's a great museum that we have gone to many, many times. It's a beautiful drive, especially in the fall. And it's a lot of outside. There's buildings, but then there's walking between the buildings. So it's a lot of outside and beautiful surroundings. And then the walkway over the Hudson in down, I don't remember exactly the city that it's in.
Is it Poughkeepsie?
Is it Poughkeepsie? Yeah, I think so. That's beautiful and easy to get to. And there's Storm King that's a little further down, that's an outdoor sculpture park that my kids love because they like to run around. So beyond that, I mean, I could name all the museums, but there are 1,000,001 museums. My kids were really good at going to museums, and they, we've been to probably, I think every one in the region. The Tang at Skidmore has been amazing. Again, I don't know what they're doing now, but what I do know is a lot of them have transitioned their programming online. So you can find, yeah, exactly. Are they still open? You can find their programming, not all of them, but many of them have transitioned stuff online. They've created videos. They've created, videos of their exhibits, videos that they offer only at the museum are now available online. So I think you could, I'm not sure if the Tang is doing anything, but I know we've gone to the FDR site in Hyde Park, and I'm pretty sure they're doing stuff online right now. So I would look around at all these places. There's the Albany Institute of History and Art. You can have a museum day each week. Friday could be museum day where you just visit these websites and explore and look around. Yeah.
A lot of the libraries, Saratoga, and we have museum passes.
Yes.
That's a great resource for families. And a lot of the museums have reopened, but they just have different restrictions. So
right.
Come and get the passes, but you'll have to just look them up on their website and see the restrictions.
Yeah, I think, that's what I've read as I was looking through. I did go to some of the websites, and like the Albany Institute of History is open.
Yes.
And so, they were never super busy to begin with. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. So, you can call ahead, you can probably make an appointment. I know I was down near Woodstock a couple weeks ago, and we went to try to go visit Opus 40, which is an outdoor kind of sculpture center, and they are only taking people by appointment. So if we had thought in advance, we could have probably had an appointment. We didn't think about it. So to be able to schedule appointments. And the great thing about the local museums, and really any museums, is they are dying to educate people. That's why they're there. That's their whole mission. And so, we did like these great programs at the Rockefeller Museum over in Stockbridge, which is a quick and beautiful drive. The Clark Art Institute, which is absolutely stunning and amazing. And as your kids, they might be too young, although they do offer programs for young kids. And if you have your own pod, you can have your own program for those kids. So the Farmers Museum out in, I'm not sure again what they're doing, but that's all out, or not all, but much of it is outside. So they might be able to, they might still be doing programming. So, we went as far as like Springfield, to the Mark Twain House and Harriet Beecher Stowe House. We went up north. We went to Ticonderoga, which I heard is closed until next September, unfortunately. We were doing things like that all the time around the community because, to me, that was super important, and it kept the kids active and engaged. And my belief, my theory is that kids who are moving learn better. And so, they were moving and learning, and also learning how to be in a museum and how to behave, and, eventually getting lots of really great compliments from docents, in the various museums of, wow, they're doing great. So, so those are some of the resources that that we used. Anyone else think of questions now that we've gone through this a little bit? I know there's always questions about paperwork and what you have to submit, and I would say that let that be the least of your worries, as stressful as it might get as you come up to the time that you have to submit your paperwork. It really, people say that New York State is the hardest state to in terms of their paperwork, but that really just means that the other states really don't expect anything. And what to submit for, I've never had a problem. I've submitted, I submit very brief quarterly reports, and I've never really been questioned on any of it. And my two older kids, by the way, are in college, and my daughter has a 4.0. She's just kind of, and because I think partly because of homeschooling, one thing that my kids learned was how to ask questions, because our homeschooling was based on, oh, what's that? Why did that happen? And we didn't know, because I'm not a teacher. We didn't know why, we didn't learn that. I didn't know that. And so we would just find the answers. We would figure it out. We would look at a book. We would look at an encyclopedia. We would go to the library. We would, find the whole section on books. Look at this. There's 10 books on this topic. And we would find the answers. So what I see now with my kids is they know how to find the answers, and their peers in school often don't. They're just like stuck. They're like, what do I do? And my daughter is she's 18. She's now a junior in college because she graduated high school with 24 credits and got her associate's degree last year at SUNY Adirondack. She finished, she took a ton of classes and she finished in 1 year. And so she's up at Potsdam to finish off her 4-year degree. So she's considered a junior, and this is her, she just got there 3 weeks ago, and she's TAing 3 classes in her major because she already has this, this knowledge. And number one, when she's asked to show up, she shows up. Like, that's, that's a basic, but, we know teenagers, right? They don't always know how to do those things. And she's just actively engaged with the learning process. So, she asks a ton of questions, and she will answer questions. She has no problem just, oh, I think it might be. And, not having to necessarily have the right answer, but the answer that she thinks, so that, it gets conversations going. And that skill, that really is a skill. And she learned that from homeschooling. She is also a fiery kid. My son is also very smart, but he's going to move at a more typical level through college because he's just not as fiery as she is, and which is fine. They both have their strengths. So, I hear a lot from people of worrying about kind of meeting the milestones and making sure that they know X, Y, or Z. And what I know from homeschooling is the more important thing is, do you know how to ask the questions? And then do you know how to find the answer? And so I think that that was the skill that my kids got from homeschooling, was how to ask the question and how to find the answer and how to keep going when you hit, when you hit a roadblock. Because I would just say, oh, well, it wasn't on that website. I guess you might want to go to another one. Or, yeah, that doesn't seem like the answer's in that book. Where else can you look? And, so they figured that out on their own, because, I didn't do it. I didn't do it for them. So, Mary Ellen, I'd be interested to know how the pod will go for you. What are your thoughts about how you're going to manage it? How many kids did you say you had?
So I have 5, so 4 kindergartners plus my 3-year-old.
Okay.
And I'm kind of just treating her as a special needs behavior issue student, because behavior, absolutely. And thankfully my husband is working from home, thankfully or unthankfully, because if she has a problem, I literally have a walkie-talkie downstairs. I'm like, come get Maddie. Up she goes.
That's great.
But, so we're doing half day. We're doing Monday through Thursday. We're taking Friday off for like field trip day.
Nice.
And we're doing, 9 to 12. So mostly I'm focusing on ELA and math for the time that I have. And play, of course. Thankfully, the way our basement is set up, we have like a learning space and then like a play area. So today was our second day, and honestly, I'm really pleased with how it went. Like we do morning meeting. I've kind of set it up where we're doing morning meeting, we're doing our morning song, and kind of like normal activities that you would do in a kindergarten classroom. And then we work on shared reading. We have a writing workshop and phonics and reading lesson. That's kind of like my ELA block. And then snack and play. And then after that is our math lesson. And I'm using Envision program, which thankfully is sold on Amazon. It's pretty cheap for each kid to have their workbook, and kind of supplementing different things. But that's kind of what we're doing. So day 2, taking it one day at a time. I mean, like, it's sort of overwhelming, but I think that just, one day at a time. And right now I'm just seeing where they are and how they can hold a pencil. Today we did a lesson on how to hold a scissor and how to hold a pencil. So it's just very basic to start out.
Well, and that's what kindergarten is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be basic, and really the time that they're spending with each other, I'm sure at this point, is so valuable that they get to kind of have this small group to be together. I mean, that's what kindergartners love, is, being with other kids. So
yeah, and like, we can get outside. My neighbors have chickens. We took a break and went outside and fed the chickens. Like,
nice.
So if I can get them, I honestly, like, and I told my husband this, even after the second day, like, we go from, activity on the carpet to the play area to the table. Outside, they're still antsy. Like, I don't know how teachers are going to do it now with the kids have to stay at their desk the whole day. Like, I don't even know. Like, they're still antsy after all that movement. Yeah. So it's just, wow.
Well, there's an energy, I think, that kids feel right now. And I know, when everything first shut down in March and February, I obviously, people whose kids had been in school and now were home were really under a lot of stress, and I get that. But my kids, who have been home all along, were unfocused and not, I was like, what are you doing? Like, we've been doing this for, like, you've literally never been to a school, and You're like wandering around aimlessly, not doing your work. I mean, I could not get them to focus. So the energy of like all around us, this swirling kind of anxiety that we were all feeling, it has an impact. And so, I really believe that the more that we just kind of keep ourselves calm, and you've worked in a school, if you're feeling super stressed as a teacher, the kids are going to sense that. And it's the same as a parent if you're feeling super stressed. So, at those moments, I always feel like the best thing to do is switch gears in some way, find a new activity, find some way to connect with them in a positive way. And, you'll have those days of struggle. I tell people that it's not like there were, bluebirds flying around my head every day. And I was, there were moments where I was like, I don't know if we're going to make it. I actually remember calling my mother-in-law once and I said, you need to come and get the kids because they're not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. Like, I was pretty sure they weren't going to make it. And she ran over and she took them and I had a break. And then, we were able to reconnect. So, there are hard days just like there are, you have to expect that that's going to happen. And then just give yourself the grace that you need to regroup and give that to the kids as well. So you reminded me when you talked about the math curriculum that you use. I did want to mention the curriculum that I use. I'm not endorsing it and I use it very loosely, but I do like it because for me it's a literature-based program. So it's cheap. So it's about $50 per year. And it comes as a PDF. It's called Build Your Library, and it's all literature based. And so, she just kind of, and it's Charlotte Mason style, I think. And so she decided, she developed this program for her own kids. And then decided, well, I could sell this and earn some money. And so that's what she does. And a lot, it's a pretty popular program, but she has the topics that she's decided you're going to do each year. And then it's based on it's a lot of reading is what I'm trying to say. So I read aloud to my kids, they read to themselves, and then we do a lot of audiobooks. And it's worked for us. It's not right for everyone because it's time intensive. And I do it a little differently now because I am working. And so, and my kids are older and can be more independent. So they are more independent. But last year we read a book. We did it as a read aloud because I wanted to read it too. And I was like, let's just read it together. And it was about the Kon-Tiki, which is a group of guys who had this theory about how natives got from, I think it was from South America over to, and now my brain isn't going to bring up the name of the islands, like Tahiti, I guess. And so none of the scientists, this was in like the 40s, I think, none of the scientists believed them of that day. And so they recreated a raft that the natives of South America would have made, and they took it across the ocean and they made it and proved that this is how humans traveled from mainland to those islands and inhabited those islands. And we loved reading it together. We were like, all summer long, I'd be like, remember in the Kon-Tiki, remember this? And so, those kinds of moments where you can share with your kids in that way, they're meaningful. And for me anyways, they're, I know my kids remember a lot about it, and they feel connected in that way. So, yeah, Laura.
So you don't feel that you have to do necessarily what Saratoga Springs is doing, or he's in 4th grade, he should be reading about a state or anything like that, and the the people who evaluate you, they don't say, oh, there's no state report.
No, yeah, it's well, so there are, I don't feel that way. The state has, they have the regulations, and it's outlined what we need to teach as homeschoolers, but it doesn't get like into that minutia of, you know, you have to do, they want you to learn New York State history, US history, and there's, you know, health. I mean, there's the whole list, and I can't remember all the things now, health and music and, you know, political science, economics eventually in high school. And I've never felt at any time that it was never my thought that I wanted to keep up with what was happening in school, because I don't know. And the district doesn't share with homeschool parents what their curriculum is. So, you know, I have no idea what they're doing. And, you know, there is kind of a faction of homeschoolers that do what's referred to as school at home, which means they are really working to recreate the school day in their home environment. And so they would sit from 8 to 2, and, you know, they would have their subject times, and they would move through. That was not what I did at all. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It just wasn't right for me. It didn't match my personality. And so, you know, we just kind of learned what we wanted to learn. And I think they got all that stuff over time. You know, you know, at one point I was like, oh, they don't know where all the states are. Oh no, what, you know, uh-oh. And so, you know, we started playing the license plate game, and then we'd look it up on a map. Well, where's that one? Where's that, you know? And they now, I wouldn't say they're 100% perfect, but they have a general idea. I can't remember either. Some of those middle states, I can't keep it straight, but they have a general idea, and they knew the capitals at one point, and I'm sure that they've forgotten, just like I've forgotten. So I never had the sense of, we have to learn X, Y, or Z. And, you know, the thing about the world that we live in now is that information is available at their fingertips, whether it's on their phones that my older kids carry with them, you know, all the time, or going to the library or doing research. They can find that information out very quickly. So
I ever feel like, you know, when it came to like physics or chemistry or anything, I would feel very intimidated, and you know, I wouldn't know where to begin. Did you ever feel intimidated that way?
Well, yeah, and by the time my kids got to that kind of stuff, because they did do chemistry and physics, they were kind of standalone curriculums that they did on their own. And, you know, they were old enough that they, you know, I would say, did you read the chemistry book today? Or where's the report that you were supposed to do? Or who's the scientist that you learned about today? You know, I would engage with them in that way. I would kind of skim through the book. I learned math along with them, but I did not relearn all the sciences. But they were more than capable by the time they had it to read through the book and figure, you know, they did little chemistry experiments at home. The curriculum that we used had, you know, gave the list of experiments. So they would have, you know, the materials they were supposed to collect. My kids would go into the kitchen or make a list of what we have to get from the store. That was their responsibility. They would set it up. I would be there with them, but they would do it themselves. It was all their responsibility. Mm-hmm. And they did fine. And, you know, the funny part is when they did their 24 credit hour program, which was all online through Genesee Community College. So they were in 11th and 12th grade. My daughter and son both together took a biology class, and it was the same thing. It was like the homeschool science we had already done. The college sent, we had to pay for a box, and we got what we needed with slides and pipettes, and they did biology experiments in my living room. It felt no different than what they had already done in chemistry and physics already.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they really learned to be self-sufficient, and
that was actually, ultimately, that was my goal, was I want you to be self-sufficient, self-directed learners.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, so there were days where, the rule is you have to finish the day's schoolwork before you can watch TV. 5 days would go by because they hadn't finished their schoolwork. And, I wasn't going to fight. And I mean, I did fight, don't get me wrong. The arguing happened.
We all have.
Exactly. But I would just say, well, no TV today. And I decided when it was important enough to them, they would catch up. And then they did. The next week, suddenly in one day, they would get 5 days worth of work done because it was important to them. There was a movie they wanted to go to, or and so they really learned how to figure that out on their own, and it has served them well. Last year, when so many college students were struggling with classes going online, and my kids were annoyed because they'd already done that. They didn't want to go back to doing online classes. They were excited to be at a campus, but they were 100% ready, and they ended up becoming leaders in their classes because they were bringing people along, like, let's do this discussion post. Let's talk about this. What did you, they would ask other people questions. What did you mean by that? Why do you think that? And so, they had that capacity, and that was important to me. I wanted them to when they were launching, that they could launch and be self-sufficient in figuring things out and learning on their own. Great. And you're welcome to email me with any questions. I'm happy to answer them. And I can also send you, if you like, the list of museums and resources that we used locally. And that I have the list with websites, but I didn't know how to share that here today. So yeah. I can pass that on to you. And I think the librarian, Laura, that you said had started. I saw the page that she had put with library books.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
that was great. So there's a couple more books that I'll just recommend. Yeah, there was a book that I really loved called Project-Based Homeschooling, and that was by, her last name was Pickert, Pickert, Lori Pickert. And then Free Range Learning was a great book. Laura Grace Weldon.
Yeah, I remember.
And The Well-Trained Mind, I know you guys have there. That's Susan Wise Bauer. That's very academic based. That's very achievement based. This is what I first looked at because I thought that that's what I wanted, and once I read through that book, I knew that wasn't what I wanted. So it was helpful to me to realize what I was going to do, what was important to me. It helped me find my values, and I really loved the book. I just realized I was never going to be that together. And then the Peter Gray, Gray, I'm sure he has books. I know he has books, but he has a website, and he writes a ton of articles, and he writes about the way kids learn and what they really need to build resources. And I love the way he writes. It's probably not for everyone. He really is kind of a buck the system kind of person, but I've appreciated his writing, and it's helped me when I need to remember that my kids are actually doing just fine. He's one of the authors I turn to when I have those moments that I need to find that center again.
Okay, so thank you everyone for coming. Schooling program coming up that Kristin's going to do in October. Also more on the mind-body kind of thing.
Yeah.
not as specifically on homeschooling. So
Right.
watch for that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. It was nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you.